wanted to spend some time watching this movie. And so it's about the confrontation, the meeting between Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg. So remember what we've talked about so far. That is that as people in various countries learn about nuclear fission, Werner Heisenberg, the Nobel laureate, the German physicist, was in charge of the German atomic bomb project. And he then, so Nazi Germany took Norway by force, occupied Denmark without resistance. Niels Bohr, the Nobel laureate from Denmark, was the father of the atom, the mentor of Werner Heisenberg. And by September 1941, Germans, Heisenberg had received 40 gallons of heavy water from the hydro plant outside of Oslo, and that was important for their atomic bomb project. And after they received that moderator, you know, they had decided, Walter Botha, a physicist in Heidelberg, had done the measurement of neutron absorption by graphite and decided graphite would not work as a moderator in the eventual nuclear reactor that they knew they had to build in order to make plutonium. In our case, Fermi and Szilard did a better measurement with pure graphite and decided graphite would work. And so the first reactor at Oak Ridge was a graphite reactor. But the Germans had messed up that measurement. So they're focused on heavy water. Thus, the heavy water came from Norway in order to do this experiment. And Heisenberg in Berlin, they mounted this experiment. They had some uranium oxide in a sphere, heavy water in a vat of heavy water that they got from Norway as the moderator. They had a neutron source at the center, a polonium source with the beryllium foil making a few neutrons, and they observed an increase in number of neutrons. Crucial experiment that this would work, that you could multiply neutrons. Oh, Mark and Mary are here. That you could multiply neutrons by having a pile of uranium with heavy water as the moderator. Fermi had showed that you could multiply neutrons, similar scheme, but with graphite as a moderator. Well, this was important. And this meant that the direction was, as we think now, that Heisenberg and his team in Berlin, the direction was not to try and enrich uranium at mass 235, but to make plutonium in a reactor. Amid all that then, Heisenberg was in Copenhagen and visited his mentor, his father-like figure, Niels Bohr. And they were close friends and colleagues. You know, they met when Heisenberg was a student, and Bohr was a Nobel laureate. They worked together, they hiked together, skied together, and of course, Bohr invented the model of the atom that orbits of electrons around the nuclei are quantized, but it was then Heisenberg who worked out the mathematics of quantum mechanics. So they worked together closely on that. Then in April 1940, Nazis occupied Denmark. And so Heisenberg was in Copenhagen for other meetings and decided to visit Niels Bohr and Margareta, his wife, in September of 1941. That's what this movie's about. And they discussed something. Heisenberg and Bohr discussed something about the atomic bomb, something, and no one knows really what they discussed. They had different versions. That's what the movie about. They met. They had a difficult dinner together, the three of them. Niels Bohr and Margareta, his wife, and Werner Heisenberg. Then they went out for a walk. Something happened. Bohr was mad. They never spoke again. Heisenberg died in 68, I think Bohr died in 62 or 3. So for the next 20 years, they didn't speak. After that fateful meeting, they went for a walk. And so the movie is about that, but the movie also is about what was the German direction, what was Heisenberg's direction to try and build an atomic bomb. I mean, after Pearl Harbor, we were fully committed, the Americans, the British, to see if you could harness the power of fission to make an atomic bomb. And that succeeded. Huge resources, driven in large part by the fear of the Germans would get there first. But were the Germans really serious about that? Was Heisenberg really serious about that? And that's the undertones of this movie. In fact, when we got, after Germany surrendered in the spring of 1945, and a team of American military experts and scientists got into Germany, they realized the Germans never got to first base on their reactor project. Heisenberg said he drug his feet trying to save the world, and maybe that was the purpose of the meeting with Bohr, to signal Bohr that he could delay the German effort if Bohr could get the Americans to delay the American atomic bomb project, Manhattan Project. That was Heisenberg's interpretation. Bohr's interpretation of that fateful meeting, September of 1941, was that Heisenberg was pumping him for details on where the Allies stood on their project, and the Germans were full speed ahead. Anyway, the debate continued. Was Heisenberg really fully into building an atomic bomb, or did he mess up? And that's this movie. I watched this movie last night at home, and for me, it was really quite good because it brings up toward the end the question of Heisenberg, did you do the calculation? And the calculation of whether fission of uranium-235 would work with a small mass of uranium-235. Heisenberg, did you do the calculation? In the movie, Heisenberg depicts that and says, no, I didn't. Bohr said, why? And then Heisenberg does the calculation mentally in this movie and realizes, my goodness, we could have enriched uranium-235 and built a bomb that way. So there's all kinds of undertones. Was Heisenberg serious about leading Germany to an atomic bomb or not? And the movie is very important. I mean, the other undertone, of course, we've discussed was when Bohr then came to Los Alamos 2 years later, he sketched this out from memory. People think that did Heisenberg draw this out for Bohr in that fateful meeting in the garden of the Carlsbad Mansion or what? And it described, Bohr was confused and thought it was a bomb sketching, but clearly this was a primitive reactor design. As sketched, it wouldn't work because it'd be sheets of uranium not conducive at all to a chain reaction. Maybe that was Bohr's misconception, misinterpretation. And so that was debated. Or did Heisenberg sketch that for Bohr incorrectly, intentionally, to confuse allies? Another point of disagreement. But Bohr carried that sketch, probably that he drew from memory, to Los Alamos, and they all decided, well, that's clearly won't work. Heisenberg was probably blowing smoke at you, Bohr. So, very much debated, and it's not really clear, still not clear, why did Heisenberg go to see Bohr in Copenhagen, September of 1941? What did they talk about? And was Heisenberg really intent on leading the German effort to build an atomic bomb or not? Those are the mysteries. The movie doesn't solve those mysteries. The movie presents the issues and then presents two different scenarios of what may have happened in that fateful discussion. The movie starts out, by the way, with Bohr, Heisenberg, and Margareta as ghosts. They're in modern day Copenhagen on the train. Don't get confused. They're ghosts. They've come back and they're reminiscing about what happened 40 years ago. And then they relive. They see them walking in, they run down Carlsberg Mansion where the Bohrs lived at that time, and then they jump back in time to 1941. So I thought it was a great movie, but of course, I'm a nuclear physicist.